Hello and welcome to today's webinar entitled How Industry Associations Can Share Confidential Data. I'm James Doyle, the Director of Global Accounts for Creme Global, and together with my colleague Sullivan, we'll walk you through the four main areas of interest in how industry associations can share confidential data. They are why share data, how to share data safely, who's doing this, and finally we'll wrap up with some of the key takeaways as you progress on your data sharing journey. Today, we'll focus on data related to the food sector, but the same points remain relevant across other sectors. So let's begin. Why share data? How about we set the scene? The food supply chain is global. Food trade traverses the world. And with that, food safety management traverses the same path, along with food fraud and various other impactful aspects. And so the key is we need to join these together to ensure that you get harmonized, centralized picture of what is going on. But that's complex, and the global supply chain is complex. And not only is it complex, but it's very dynamic. It's a 24/7 system with emerging risks and ever-changing pressures, often outside the control of those directly managing the supply chain itself. Along with that, data is confidential. Within all these systems, data that is traditionally not shared, which would really benefit the supply chain to help bring actionable intelligence to bear along the food supply chain, is being held within silos. So how can we break those silos down? How can we bring insights from good data to help inform better decision making? And people understand that having the most relevant up-to-date data to hand helps inform better decision-making, removes key uncertainties. Hundreds, if not thousands, of individual decisions are made daily across the supply chain, each of which could be positively impacted by better data. But insight requires a lot of data itself. What is the solution? After 20 years experience working with global industry, trade organizations, and regulators, the solution is a data trust. What is a data trust? Very simply put, it is two key aspects. It's an agreement to share data and a secure platform on which to share that data. What are the benefits? Well, of course, central to all of this is safer food. That, from our perspective, and I know a lot of the people who've joined this webinar, needs to remain a non-competitive aspect. But of course, food testing and surveillance costs money. And by the collective sharing of data, it will help reduce costs, bring better awareness to all the key stakeholders on what is the best view of what is going on right now, today. And thirdly, and it's okay to acknowledge, it will help maximize revenue. The food industry itself is a very lean industry. As I said, a 24/7 system. And so collectively, pooling resources benefits all. When we talk about trade organizations, it's right to look at the benefits for individual members themselves. And so at the core of today's webinar is confidential data. And so to provide a platform which is easy to use, secure and safe is critical. Centralizing data in one place. Also, breaking down those silos that I mentioned earlier. User-friendly across the food industry, but I don't think specific to those. Time is money. And so to have a user-friendly system where people can rapidly gain insights, access data, and not be overwhelmed by that data is critical. And then to be able to use that data to inform other decisions throughout your organization, being able to add this quickly to reports and documentation to inform other decisions, knowing that this is one critical tool in a series of food safety or risk management decision-making tools. Will might touch briefly on this as well, but beyond when you get your data house in order and having a collective centralized data sharing repository, that is the base and foundation to really utilize the power of new emerging technologies such as AI and ML. And of course, finally, is to reduce food safety risk. These aren't ranked by priority, and of course, the ultimate priority is to keep people safe and consumers safe. There are various scenarios that we can look into. There could be industry-only scenario, and these could be within industry. It could be divisions within your own industry in how you can share data across them to the benefit of your own company. We can talk about anonymization and aggregation, and we'll talk a little bit further about how we utilize software techniques to implement those, and ultimately to provide useful visualization dashboards where you gain your insight. These could also be industry to industry, and sometimes competitors also, but with an understanding that actually collectively, when we're open and transparent and share data anonymously, we can all benefit. The same goes for regulators. And we're seeing a huge uplift globally now where the concept of sharing confidential data is not such a scary thing anymore. Actually, people understand it's a critical step that needs to be made. And hopefully today, you'll gain some of the insights in how to either start that data sharing journey, or for those who are already progressed along it, how to continue driving that into your organization and get the most benefit out of it. What's the ideal scenario, though? Is actually coming together of both industry, regulator, where we all have centralized data and we can start to understand some of the vagrancies and differences between approaches so that everyone can focus on the main core element, which is keeping food safe, putting food safety at the top of the focus here. Who can see the data? Control is the key question. You control your own data from start to finish. And I think this is one key aspect, and it's good just to reiterate that control, that in order to de-risk the sharing of confidential data, and we'll talk a little bit about how we remove metadata, a footprint, so it will not be associated with your specific organization. But from start to finish, within a data trust, no one owns your data. You control it. How best to share data? At this stage, at this point, I will hand over to Will, and he'll talk further a little bit about the technical nuances and architectures and the simple structure that will help you quickly and rapidly share data.
Thanks very much, James. Hi, everyone. I'm Will, the head of data science at Creme Global, and I'm now going to start talking about some of the kind of technical components that go into making a data trust for data sharing work. But first things first, I think it's right that we start with a kind of common starting point for a lot of businesses and genuinely organizations that are interested in sharing data. And that is starting from the tools that we have at our disposal. In a lot of cases, folks will start by doing their kind of fundamental data analysis in tools like Excel. But as anyone who's ever conducted decision-making for the purpose of improving their business, they know the best business is made with the best intelligence. Now, Excel admittedly has its utilities, but there is data locked away in data formats that aren't this nice tabular table form. Think about human written reports or automated data collection systems. This data platform has a lot of facilities for bringing together all of these different kinds of data into a unified system that allows us to then start exploring uncertainty, trends, and opportunities emergent in that data. The first step in what is a 5-step process here is anonymized data submission. So first things first, we want to make sure that everybody in the room is comfortable sharing data between organizations. Oftentimes, it's the case that data sharing is new. And so people want that assurance, that sense of security that they are anonymized and that as their data goes to be stored in a collective environment, that it's suitably and securely aggregated. That does bring us to that secure data storage with legal privilege included per the agreement terms of a data trust. So it's in this area whereby this entity holds a set of data on behalf of all these anonymized participants, whereby that data is then re-anonymized and sent back towards our systems. It's at this point that Creme Global can perform data aggregation on the collected information that the trustees have provided. So this can include both the aggregated data they submit directly, as well as supplemental data that we collect from public sources. Moving on from here then, This data is aggregated to the effect of providing advanced dashboard visualizations, which we then give back access to the members. So this allows them to see the broad strokes trends that are emerging in the data that they might not have seen if they were only sharing data between just one or two participants. Instead, getting a full spectrum of data sharing actors allows you to see what an industry trend really looks like beyond the confines of your own organization. I mentioned there the legal privilege component of secure data sharing, and that is one of the ways in which we actually ensure that data that is submitted under the pretense of kind of a double-blind anonymity. So what this means is we provide credentials to a third party like a law firm, and they in turn provide those credentials further out to other participants in the data sharing program. That means that when we see data coming in under any of these kind of blinded submission accounts, we actually have no way of knowing who submitted that data in particular. What this means is that this organization can be sure that if there's ever any degree of traceback to what that data might look like or trends related to this organization, it stops dead at this level of anonymization. This is an example of one of the structures that we have for one of our ongoing projects that we will come back to later that integrates the law firm anonymization. So here we have incoming inspection data, which is anonymized, aggregated, and visualized per the data trust structure. Furthermore, we actually have a nice feature that allows us to provision users with different degrees of access. Data submitters are capable of, naturally enough, submitting data for review. Data approvers are a step above that in the approval chain, being able to look at data these submitters have lodged to the system and saying that data is all clear, feel free to submit that for sharing. And we have administrators that sit even above that, who can submit, review, and see all submitted data within their organization. Additionally, if required, we can also create special user types called data viewers who are just able to access the aggregated data. No need for them to submit data, have it approved. Their use case is what kind of information are these organizations sharing? How can I see that to make my own decisions? To this effect, again, this structure can be expanded even further. With the FDA's food safety data sharing platform, we have a number of different user types in the FDA themselves, and adjacent organizations can join this data trust with their own set of kind of organization-specific user access levels. They can share data, which is anonymized independently and then aggregated, which then, in combination with some supplemental data, can be fed in towards predictive modeling algorithms that also go into these endpoints that are the dashboard visualizations. Of course, when it comes to working with the likes of big data, artificial intelligence, and machine learning, you are going to want a big data set to train really powerful models. If your industry is lacking in terms of advanced analytics, data trusts are one of the really important and powerful mechanisms that you can use to make this level of data available so that models can be trained on that data. Now, I'm going to talk about a few different case studies. So we have 3 different organizations who are tasked with either collecting or sharing data between their own member participants here. And to that effect, let's get started with a look at the Western Growers program. So the Western Growers, in conjunction with Creme Global, have assembled the Greenland platform. This is used for sharing food safety data. So that's microbial testing for the likes of E. coli, salmonella in leafy greens, to the interests of improving food safety across the US. Naturally enough, with a lot of this testing taking place in America's salad bowl, it's important to make sure that we are making the best data-driven decisions when it comes to monitoring our agriculture. Again, this platform does not really deviate from the structure we discussed earlier on. All of these organizations are participating with their own specific user types to aggregate shared data, which is then anonymized and further aggregated with the addition of supplemental data like CAFO data that we've collected from the EPA. Furthermore, this data does actually receive a degree of modeling and just undergoes some kind of manipulations and analytics before it even lands in this dashboard. So we're really keen to make sure that all of these results that all of the end users of this data trust are seeing are really actionable insights in an industry that is really up and coming with how they are using data to make better decisions in terms of how to inform better testing policies and how to improve food safety overall. Of course, This system is not without its own tricks. There's a few different ways in which a large number of growers, so again, we're talking a huge number of participants here, are submitting data. There won't be a unified system for all of this data submission yet. That is what GreenLink is aiming to be. So by virtue of being able to aggregate data across direct uploads to our portal, Excel, CSV, XML, JSON type submissions, PDFs, as well as direct connections to some more sophisticated systems who have data APIs themselves, we essentially homogenize all this data together so that it can turn into something that is useful for every single different participant in GreenLink, regardless of what their level of technical sophistication is, whether or not you're transcribing or submitting copies of handwritten documents, or whether you're setting a high recurrency set of automated data collection systems to then ping our systems. It does not matter. The data sharing journey can start for anyone at any point in their own expertise with data. And of course, we have to talk about the benefits. So GreenLink's been running for 3-4 years now, and to the effect of advancing food safety. They're able to test their hypotheses about how different methods of both testing, growing, are affecting food safety practices. They're able to optimize the cost effectiveness of their preventative measures. If you have areas or commodities that aren't very likely to report positivity for given types of tests, you can focus your tissue testing on areas that might be causing you trouble, making sure that you have all of the right bases covered. Furthermore, these participants in GreenLink get to learn from the data themselves, identifying emerging trends. So it's common knowledge in the leafy green industry that we have seasonal upticks in the prevalence of E. coli and Salmonella. Being able to catch when that's starting leads to really good testing programs. And finally, it's to build trust. We want to demonstrate the effectiveness of these testing measures and protocols to regulators, but also to retailers and to consumers so that everyone knows that their food is being taken care of in the best way possible. And so case study number 2 looks at the Fin Data Trust. Fin is the Food Intelligence Industry Network. And in the wake of the horse meat scandal, one of the recommendations was that industry come together to share data to prevent food fraud and to find concerns for authenticity. And so the Fin platform was born. And from 2015 all the way up to now, members have been working to share data together to further their understanding of risks to authenticity, the presence of anomalies in food supply chains, ultimately to make sure that food is secure, safe, and what it says it is. Ultimately, this data sharing allows Fin members insight across their global supply chains with a density of testing that no single organization would be able to reproduce by itself. So many of these labels here refer to all these fantastic participants in Fin who have a new way to combat food fraud by virtue of sharing data. So they're able to secure and ensure the integrity of their food supply chains to protect the interests of their customers. We were just actually at a meeting with the Fin members there last week, myself and James, and it was great to see so many folks turn out for almost a celebration of what the benefits of data sharing really look like and how they're so good for the food industry altogether. And of course, as I mentioned before, we have this Fin Data Trust structure that leans into using this law firm to anonymize their credentials. So from our side of things, we do not know which of those brands on the previous slide are corresponding to any single data point. It is very much a case of being double-blind anonymized to the point where all that we get are a set of data to aggregate, to analyze, and to generate insight from, to deliver that back towards the Fin members who have decided to come together of their own accord to share this data. Naturally enough, all this data sharing comes with its own benefits, both in terms of prediction and prevention. They are now able to anticipate changes in the landscape using data. They can ensure that their food is safer, high quality, and is what it says it is on the tin. And furthermore, they're able to crowdsource knowledge. So trends that really would have been isolated to data at large are now accessible to every participant in Fin. And finally, for case study number 3, we have the FDA's Food Safety Data Sharing Platform. As Creme Global were awarded a tender with the FDA to develop and maintain this food safety data sharing platform, we thought there was no better architecture out there than the data trust. Essentially, pulling together data not just from FDA, but from other agencies, and indeed leaning into other industries, we're hitting that sweet spot between industry and regulator data sharing. The FDA's data sharing food safety platform is very much comprised of folks from the seafood sector to produce and generally into all foods who are interested in sharing data. And so we lean on this kind of split architecture whereby multiple different organizations have their own different levels of permission. Their data is aggregated separately and reviewed separately so that industry is able to see exactly what they're submitting, and the regulators are all able to see what they're submitting before combining all of their data into one large set. And then that data set is then further supplemented with existing public-facing data and passed through, again, our insights and analytics engine to produce dashboards that give meaningful insights that decisions can be made on. But additionally, that data is then actually turned towards predictive modeling. So building those artificial intelligence and machine learning models on data that is aggregated to forward the FDA's era of smarter food safety. And of course, the benefits are abundantly clear from day one. FDA are able to see their data now in an organized and structured format. And as data from other agencies is aggregated and shared and brought into the fold, we see that the amount of data available has skyrocketed from the FDA's 2,000 odd data points here in this diagram to nearly 29,000 after all of these different organizations have come together to share data about food safety. This allows them to ask better questions and to direct where data needs to be acquired next. Additionally, this allows them to reveal new insights, again, capturing trends that they wouldn't have been able to see just by looking at their data in isolation. Now, new trends in the presence and concentrations of contaminants in seafood across multiple different regions are emerging, but even then, that's being extended to all foods as more and more data pours into the FDA's food safety data sharing platform. Naturally enough, then, this also extends to resource management. In any resource-constrained system, people are going to want to make sure that their resources are allocated for the highest impact. And it's no different here. People want to know where to test and what to test for to get the most important results that impact human health. And now I'll hand back to James Doyle for a few kind of key takeaways.
Thanks, Will, for that. Really interesting to see, I guess, the wisdom of the crowd. And I think I don't know personally of any quicker, better way to gain the level of data you need to really have relevant insights to take forward than sharing. And some gold standards that we see across the globe in how sharing data is actually really impacting change and making a difference to companies. In the final few minutes, I guess I want to just lean on a selection of key takeaways or thoughts that we've noted from various engagements over the many years that we've been working on this. The first one is very simple: articulate the vision and benefits, and knowing that vision may change over time. But if you have that data house in order, the ability to project a different visualization or present the results in a way that can gain you benefit and offer rapid insights is easily done. A balance between standardization and flexibility. We'll talk about this in a couple of the case studies, but ultimately, any new system can become a change management issue within an organization. And so the data trust offers flexibility so that people can continue doing practice as they normally have, but gain better benefit by centralizing the data and utilizing the architecture that Will went through. Scientific input is needed. I think this is across the board. Pooling data together into one large big data set does not help if that is all you do. So maybe a key word to bring into play here is context. And so what we want to do is move data from that centralized data warehouse, structured, validated, large data set, to put context on it. So that's where you gain your actionable intelligence. Align terminology, does what it says on the tin, but never be surprised between offices that might be 10 yards away from each other, there is different terminology being used. And especially when you get data sets together, you want to be very clear so that you can gain that intelligence from it. Start collecting data. We'll talk about the various ways we can ingest data, the various habits and practices that people use, both from written script on a piece of paper to Excel formats. But there is no better time to start collecting data today. And this also goes to a culture within a company, and this may be from management down, to understand that collecting and collating your data should be a crucial requirement across divisions. Visual analytics are powerful. Do not underestimate the power of the eye. I know we touched on, and we do as a company, support AI and machine learning predictive models and tools, and they are very powerful and very useful. But before that, and I mentioned context there in the slide previously, do not underestimate the power of the human eye, especially when it's coming from someone who's got scientific expertise in a domain. Keep going. It is a journey. The three examples that we talked through are on various stages of their own journey, but it is not a destination such as food safety is not a destination that will be reached and ended. It will go on forever. And so I talked briefly about culture. This is an ongoing episode and system that you need to integrate within your company to get the most benefit from it. And it's right to say reputations are built on the decisions you make. And there is yet to be someone who is happy to make decisions with no data to give them a pointer at all. Ultimately, data helps de-risk decisions, helps you make better informed decisions. And from a business point of view, that's absolutely where you want to be. And so what we want to do is provide that infrastructure so you can de-risk those decisions and you can uphold your sterling reputation as well. So finally, I want to thank everyone for joining. There are people who joined who we're already working with in some of the case studies that we talked about. There are some new people as well. And maybe one of the takeaways would be that if you are beginning your journey, your data sharing journey, please reach out to us. And we're happy to talk and set up a call and talk with you and your team also. But with that, we'll end the webinar. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day.